Restokim Grosseria. Nidius Entertainment. Wah, pakai fitur lifestyle di BCA Mobile. Semua bisa terkabul, mantul. Makanya buka tabungan dulu di BCA Mobile.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you guys. I want to start telling you a story about me and a guy called Malcolm Gladwell, which, you know the author Malcolm Gladwell? The guy writing the book called The Tipping Point. Malcolm Gladwell and I were at the savannah in Zambia on a holiday. And he was sitting there looking at all the animals, and he asked me a question, only a question which a Malcolm Gladwell can ask. He said, Martin, have you noticed how people here in Zambia are wearing hats, but in the rest of the world, they no longer wear hats? That idea of putting on a hat if you're a man, and then you'll go to work, right? And then when you go back again, you'll take the hat off and you will be a private person. It's gone. And he was right, it was gone. So he asked me the question, when did it happen? Now, you may think, why am I talking about a hat? Well, the answer will reveal why all of you in this room right now are behaving remarkably different than what you did back then because of a hat. The answer can be found in 1969. It's the year where J.F. Kennedy was inaugurated as the first president in the history not to wear a hat. Not a big deal, you may say. Why should I care? Well, you shouldn't care because what's fascinating is that he suddenly stopped the separation between private and work. And it continued. Suddenly, men were no longer wearing a tie. Steve Jobs stopped that in the 80s. Not a big deal, you may say. Well, it kind of is. Because suddenly, the separation between private and work started to disappear. And it continued. Now we have an office in our pockets called the smartphone. We are doing all our work at home and all our private stuff at work. There's no separation anymore. And if that's not enough, then think about this. That now we have a pipeline of bureaucracy going straight into our bedrooms. There is no private life anymore. Why is it so important to understand? Because I'm pretty sure most of you feel different today than you did just 3 years ago. And the difference is this. In the old days, we had a term called B2B and B2C, business to business and business to consumer. Well, those two terms, I would claim, are now basically the same. In fact, they're not relevant anymore. Instead, we can call it now H to H, human to human. Why? Let's say that my wife sends a vase from Indonesia. It's in one piece. She's using DHL. It's arriving to Europe, and it arrives in 6,000 pieces. Now, let's say that I was responsible for courier services at the company, and I had to figure out if I wanted to use DHL or TNT or whatever, coincidentally. Would I be impacted by my private experience? Yeah, of course I would. The separation between private and work is non-existing today. It means that we have a completely new market, and with that, new needs, and yes, a new playbook. This is important to understand because consumers are now dramatically changing. And I don't think there's a better way of explaining that to introduce you to this remote control. As you can see, it is slightly complicated. In fact, I would say it can launch a spaceship. It has 2 on buttons and 2 off buttons, and I tried to switch it on when I used my television in a hotel in Miami, where I shot this photo. And I switched it on, and the light went up, but the television was still off. So it took me 5 minutes to figure out how to switch on the television. Okay, anyway, I succeeded, right? And then I wanted to switch off the television after half an hour. Well, forget about that. The first off button dimmed the light in kind of a moody, sexy way. And the second off button switched off the air conditioning system. But the television was still running. So I had to crawl under the minibar, unplug the minibar and the television. And that's really my story. Except for a little detail. This is not a lie. But 3 months later, I'm now sitting on a plane going from Miami to JF Kennedy's airport. And this guy, American guy, is sitting next to me. And he says to me, so where are you working? I said, well, I help companies to be transformed. What are you doing? Well, I work for a company you probably haven't heard about. I said, what company is that? Sonic Blue. Sonic Blue. I say, what the fuck are you guys thinking? And the guy was completely perplexed. I mean, like a deer in the headlight, completely surprised, right? So I said to him, I tried to use your remote control 3 months ago, and I pulled out a PowerPoint presentation with a photo. And I said, I can't switch on the damn television. Why are you guys doing this? And he looked me in the eyes and he said, I'll tell you why. We had conflicts internally in our company. We had one division running Netflix, another one running radio, sounds, one streaming, one recording functions, one television, all these functions. And all those divisions did not want to work together. We had fights. So we decided to split the remote control into zones. One department had responsibility for one, which is the reason why there's 2 numeric number pads, right? 2 off buttons and 2 on buttons, because they couldn't really come to an agreement. So we just split it. And it's perfect, he said. We don't have any conflicts internally at all. And I said to him, except one thing, I can't even switch off your television. The story is very simple. That what's happening with technology and what you guys will experience if you are not experiencing it already now is that complexity increasingly will rule our world, even though we think simplicity will. For the last decade alone, we are wasting 17% more time because of technology. We always said that technology is about efficiency, right? Well, how many of you have had problems logging in because you can't remember that password you used because you had to change it because it didn't have 2 uppercases and 1 number in the back? And by the way, when you use your last password, it said to you, you already used it 5 sessions ago. So you kind of can't remember that password, so you write it down on a piece of paper and place it next to your computer. Have you tried that? Yeah, right? issue is that if we want to stand apart in technology, we need to see the world differently. So in 1997, I went to San Francisco to attend a conference. And I was sitting in the audience like you, and there was this crazy inventor on stage. And he came up, there was a guy asking a question in the audience. He said, "You have developed a piece of software called OpenDoc. It's great, it has all those functionalities. But tell me one thing with OpenDoc. It was so nice, and now you developed this simple software, and I can't understand why." And the crazy inventor answered this.
You can please some of the people some of the time, but one of the hardest things when you're trying to affect change is that people like this gentleman are right in some areas. I'm sure that there are some things OpenDoc does, probably even more that I'm not familiar with, that nothing else out there does. And I'm sure that you can make some demos, maybe a small commercial app that demonstrates those things. The hardest thing is, how does that fit in to a cohesive, larger vision that's going to allow you to sell $8 billion, $10 billion of product a year? And one of the things I've always found is that you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room. And I've got the scar tissue to prove it. And I know that it's the case. And as we have tried to come up with a strategy and a vision for Apple, it started with what incredible benefits can we give to the customer? Where can we take the customer? Not starting with, let's sit down with the engineers and figure out what awesome technology we have, and then how are we going to market that? And I think that's the right path to take.
You got to start with the customer experience first and work backwards towards the technology. Let's just pause here for a second. I love Indonesia. You have 3 strengths right now, which few other markets in the world have. 1, you're almost 100% self-sufficient. You can't produce microchips yet, but that's about it. 2, you come from a service culture. The roots is from a service culture. And 3, you have the biggest or one of the biggest growing network of entrepreneurs in the tech industry in this region. If you combine those 3 things, and you always think about you've got to start with the customer experience first and work towards the technology, you will be ahead of everyone else. Because every other market will start with the technology first and go towards customer experience. And there's a heck of a difference between those 2 things. What you should do and what we are doing in general is to see the world from a different point of view. Like this old ad from 1980 from The Guardian.
An event seen from one point of view gives one impression. Seen from another point of view, it gives quite a different impression. But it's only when you get the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on.
Wow. So what is the point of difference? Well, I tend to say that if you want to study animals, don't go to the zoo, go to the Amazon. So what does that mean? Well, I think the best way of illustrating that is when I, many years ago, in fact, almost 20 years ago, met up with this guy, the founder, the owner, and back then the CEO of IKEA. Now, I went to Sweden, and he was not there. I said, where is he? He's down at his usual place. Where is that? Down at the cash register. Sure enough, I went down to the store, the IKEA store, and there this old man, already back then, was checking the customers out. And I remember I said to him during the break, why do you do that? And he said, because I want to look every customer in the eyes and feel what they're thinking and hear what they're dreaming about. And that is the foundation for IKEA. This is the reason why we are where we are today. The idea is very simple. When you are an entrepreneurial company, it's all about putting yourself in the shoes of a customer and feel what that customer is feeling. That is a different point of view than most bigger organizations have, which are so obsessed with customers. There's just one detail: they never talk to them. They talk about them a lot. They have spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets. They have PowerPoint presentations. They love PowerPoint presentation. And they have unlimited number of slides. But ask anyone in those organizations, how many actually went out to consumer homes or into the offices of the customers and actually talked to the customers? You probably won't find a single person. And there will be all sorts of excuses why that's not relevant. But I'll tell you another story. This is the founder and the owner of Ferrari Chocolates. Back then, before he passed away, the richest man in Italy. You know him from the Kinder Surprise eggs. You know all that amazing chocolate? Nutella? That's the man. He called me one day, this is many years ago, and he said, Mr. Lindstrom, I have a problem. Could you help me? I said, sure, of course. It's an honor. So we met up in Napoli, in southern Italy. Mr. Ferrari was haunted by a lot of people which wanted to have his money. So he didn't arrive in one car. He arrived in 6 cars. One car was with Mr. Ferrari, and 5 cars which were his bodyguards. So we drew in, and I was standing in front of a little kiosk selling his products. And I remember Mr. Ferrari came out and 6 bodyguards followed him. Mr. Lindstrom, what's your advice? I was a bit nervous, I have to say. Follow me, Mr. Ferrari. So we went inside, and I'll never forget it because first Ferrari came and then you had 6 bodyguards following him into this little kiosk. It was not bigger than this little stage here. So what should I do, Mr. Ferrari said to me. I said, listen, follow every step I do. And then I did something which he will never forget until the day he died. I went down on all 4 like this. I started to crawl down the floor in the kiosk with all his products on the shelf. And I'll never forget it because I looked behind me and Mr. Ferrari was now crawling behind me on all 4, the richest man in Italy, and behind him, the 6 bodyguards were following him on all 4. I then reached for the shelf to reach his product, and I couldn't reach it. I couldn't get it. And I turned around and saw Mr. Ferrari try to do the same. And I looked him in his eyes. And I saw what he was feeling. That was the problem. He's lost contact with the customers. Yes, maybe that he was really good in his mind because he was the founder. He invented the most innovative chocolate concepts in the world. But the bureaucracy through the systems were watering out all of it, ending up in PowerPoint presentations and Excel spreadsheet. They later changed. The idea is very simple. When I met up with the chairman and the founder of Inditex, which is one of the most complex retail operations in the world, the ones running Zara, the 3rd largest fashion chain in the world. When you go into their headquarters, it's like NASA. It has computers everywhere. They know every single sale going on every second in the world. Yet the chairman said to me, our sales associate call the store managers every day to check in and hear what the customers are telling them. Our data is not enough. We need to feel the reality. I call that small data, seemingly insignificant observations you make in consumers' mind. And people say to me, how can you make conclusions based on 10 or 20 or 30 interviews? Well, I went to Switzerland the other day, and they took a blood sample from me. They didn't take 6 liters of blood. They only took 20 or 30 drops, enough for me to get a sense if you're healthy or not. The issue is that sometimes very few insights is enough to understand a situation, like Best Buy in the United States. A homeware store with all the hammers and plumbers ready, yet this CCTV camera recording reveals there's a slight problem with the store configuration. What you're watching right now is a focus group of 3. But there was enough insight for the board to realize there was a problem. And that problem was later on ratified, and as a consequence of that, the sales of Best Buy products went up 5.5%. What I'm talking about now is that insight is extraordinarily important. And let me just give you one example. It's a new example happening during COVID-19. It's from one of our pharma clients. It's a company, one of the largest in the world, dealing with respiratory disease and asthma. You know, when you take these inhalers, that's the company. Now, this company had been around for almost 100 years. I remember I spoke to the owner and I said to him, my classic question, when did you last speak with a customer? He said, never. I said, never. So you've been around for nearly 100 years, you've never spoken to the patients? No. I said, that's probably the reason why you have a problem right now. So we started a mission to spend time with the customers, where we moved into these customer homes and started to understand what's going on in these homes. And I'll never forget it, because in one instance, we went into a home of a 29-year-old girl. She'd had asthma her entire life, and she was very impacted by it. And I asked her one of those questions which later on showed to have a profound impact. I asked her, how did it feel like to have asthma as a child? And she started to cry. She told me this story about how she was teased in school, how she had no friends, how she was a disgrace for human mankind. That's what she said. They told her in school. So I said, hey, it looks like you changed quite a lot since then. I mean, really, right now I'm noticing that you have quite a lot of self-confidence. What has changed since then? And she pulled out a straw from her handbag, an ordinary white straw. And I couldn't really figure out what she meant. So she said, this is my secret. I literally take this straw and I give it to new friends and new acquaintances whenever I meet them. And I ask them to hold themselves with the nose and then to breathe through the straw for just 1 minute. And then they will feel exactly what I'm feeling. So I stole the idea. I'll be honest with you. I went up with the senior management and I had a meeting with all of them and I gave them a straw. I said to them, let's breathe through the straw for 1 minute. And I'll never forget it, because one executive, he breathed through the straw for 30 seconds and then he spit it out. And he said, Who on earth can live like this? This is stupid. I said, this is how your patients feel every day and every minute of their entire life. And they're paying your salary. This is the reason why you are here. If you could hear a penny drop on the floor, you would have heard it. And this is really my point. My point is that what we have realized in our world is that we are losing contact with the customers. And it's not become better that we have COVID-19 in the aftermath. I mean, you here in Indonesia was very quick at rushing out on the streets again. So you try to keep that sense of belonging intact. But the reality is that we slowly started to lose a sense of empathy and interaction with people. That little eye contact, which is so important. But it also means that right now we have an opportunity. Do you remember we talked about a new playbook? Well, as Charles Darwin once said, in times of great change, it's not the strongest nor the cleverest that survive, but the ones most adaptable to change. Many years ago, Procter & Gamble developed a methodology. They called it the entry points. The entry points is a strategy, very simple, that you have in your life 7 different entry points. An entry point is something so profound in your life that you'll never forget it and you'll change your behavior straight away. An entry point can, for example, be when you expect a newborn baby, right? Newborn baby, suddenly there's baby strollers everywhere, whatever it is. And suddenly you live in a new place, you have new friends, you suddenly buy new products and brands, right? Now we have 7 of those entry points in our lives. Until recently, though. Because what our studies have shown using neuroscience is that we, in fact, now have changed our behavior because of COVID-19 and the aftermath of COVID-19. But what it basically means is that we now are seeing and experiencing the world different. And I'm not sure if you tried it, but a lot of people were lacking the sense of touch when we were locked in. In fact, I noticed that when I was in Sydney, in Australia, that there was this old woman reaching for a dog, and she started to touch this stranger's dog. And I didn't think a lot about it, except that exactly the same happened about 2 days later, elsewhere in the city. And I thought, why? But of course, I realized people were suppressed for the sense of touch, which explains why the numbers of pets sold went up more than 230% over the last 2 years. Which, of course, is now revealing that there is a new need. It's a new trend we're seeing. And that's the reason why, for the first time in living memory, we are now experiencing an 8th entry point, a global synchronized behavioral change, which we've really never seen before. So what does it mean for you guys? Well, it means, for example, the touch is going to change. We will touch things differently. Products will be more tactile. It means that there'll be a stronger purpose in products and services because we have realized we are not invincible. We probably will die. We didn't know that before for some reason. Now we certainly are realizing that. We also will realize in the future that in fact, we have to be together with people in a different way. I want to give you an example from this world of changing the perspective. And I think the best way of doing that is before we start to do an experiment with all of you guys. Are you up for an experiment, all of you? So here's the experiment. Let's put the room light up. So the experiment is this. Good morning, everyone, by the way. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Oh, my God. Is he so bad looking, the guy sitting next to me? No? Okay, so here is the experiment. I would like you to look the person sitting on your right side in the eyes. On the right side. If there is no one on the right side, look at the person on the left side. And if you're really desperate, it's okay that you find a random person. Okay? Now, this is not a joke. You promised me you're up for an experiment, right? So, look the person in the eyes, but here comes the trick. Number one, you're not allowed to talk. It's not a break. The break is in 30 minutes, but not now. The second thing is, you have to do it for 1 minute. You ready? 1 minute. Counting down now. Here we go. Look at the person to your right. Come on. Continue for 1 minute, please. Everyone, continue 1 minute. There's a lovely lady. 1 minute. "30 seconds left. "25 seconds left. You're good. Continue. 20 seconds left. Continue. Don't talk. Don't talk. 15. 10. 7. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Yeah! Well done! Well done! I'm impressed. You're good. How was it? Ooh, weird, right? Yeah, weird. Do you know what? I bet you some of you suddenly connected with a person in a slightly different way than you did just before. Right? It's strange. How many of you connected in a different way? Connected, raise your hand. Whoa, yeah, look around. Wow. How can you do that on Zoom? Or Teams? Or a Twitter message which is 100 plus characters? Or on Instagram? Or a Snapchat? Or a TikTok? Huh? I'm going to tell you a story about some of the most valuable assets we as human beings have in our lives. It's an asset with this young boy have, but may lose because of you guys in this room. Let's talk about it for a second. It's called empathy.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Do you remember I said to you that here in Indonesia you have 3 strengths? I was lying. I have 4. Our research study shows that one of the countries in the world with the highest degree of empathy is in Indonesia. So why is that relevant at all for you? Because if you can embed empathy into technology, into the way you run companies, you have a difference. You stand out, and you actually are doing good at the same time. Because here is the very sad truth that we also can see as a consequence of COVID-19, that empathy is having a global existential crisis. And empathy, by the way, is the main reason why we as humans exist, because we're able to put ourselves into the polar bear's feet and predict what it would do before it knew it itself. No other species or animal in the planet have empathy. We're the only ones. But what we can see from neuroscience now is that the brain and the area in the region responsible for empathy is shrinking. Right now it's shrinking, literally shrinking. And it's happening for a strange reason with even more concerning outcomes.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points.
Yeah.
The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay.
Why did I share that with you? Because what we now can see is that the number of women and men getting Botox is disconnecting them from their children. We literally can see that the lack of facial movement means that children can no longer recognize the mother because empathy is dying. Every aspect of what we do today is destroying empathy. Yet what Maya Angelina once said, people will forget what you say, they'll forget what you do. They'll never forget how you make them feel. which leads to some of the research study we've done on our brains. What we realized is that 85% of everything we do every day is subconscious. The iceberg is the rational part. That's what we can see, it's tangible, we can touch it, right? We can measure it. But what's underneath the surface is where brands are built and born. This is also where empathy lives. And I want to share with you an experiment we did in Canada, where we set up a fake scenario. We invited people to participate in a happiness story. They had to have their happiness level measured. But what they didn't know was that in the middle of the experiment, this would happen.
Hey guys, is anyone parked out on the street with a white Infinity? Me. You didn't park like at the meters, did you?
Yeah.
Do any of you guys have a black Toyota?
Oh, please don't tell me it's a Toyota Yaris.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, seriously?
Yeah.
What happened? No.
This is just on there.
Oh, why did I get that?
Did I just get a parking ticket? Shoot, that's weird. I just put money in the meter.
I paid it for 2 hours at quarter of.
I paid for the parking meter.
Did you? And it said approved.
Because the sign said like 2 hours at like 10 p.m. So I was like, oh, I should be okay. Son of a gun.
It sucks.
Oh,
Did you get a parking ticket?
Yeah. I thought that street was safe though, because today's Monday, right?
It is Monday.
So it said no, there's street sweeping on Tuesday, and then it said 2 hours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.
You sure it wasn't 10 a.m. and 6 p.m.?
I should probably take a picture of it and try to.
It's like, dang. I don't know how I got a ticket. I'm not in the red.
Okay, so let's just pause this for a second. Remember, this is fake. They didn't get a parking ticket. It was part of the experiment, right? So now we had the lab scientist going into the room and basically using two techniques. He had sympathy and empathy, right? So let's just show what happened when he used sympathy. And listen to the difference, because it's pretty minute, but super important.
Did you get a parking ticket?
Yeah,
Wow, that sucks.
I'm not exactly sure why.
Good thing they caught it. Maybe it would have gotten towed if it had been there longer or something like that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Gotta look on the bright side.
Could have been worse, I guess.
Oh man.
You know? And it's not like you're gonna get towed or anything.
Do they do that around here?
They're vicious. Yeah, at least you didn't get towed or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe you can find it.
I hope so, because I'm kind of like, that's a little.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is sympathy, right? Then we have empathy. You ready? Here's empathy.
Did you get a parking ticket?
Yes, but I just paid for 2 hours.
Ouch.
They're the worst.
They just blow your whole day.
Yeah.
I'm stunned. It was $63.
Oh no. The tickets are so expensive. Maybe they made a mistake or something. That sucks though.
I don't know, the credit card didn't go through or
Maybe,
something.
yeah, because like you just walk away, right, after you do it.
It said approved before we walked away.
Oh, shoot. I swear, like my car was one time 13 inches from the curb and they were like, too much.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I've gotten parking tickets from the city and like that were not fair. And I know like everybody says that, but I swear.
You know what the difference was? I'll tell you. Now people are asked to fill out the happiness form again, using the excuse of, sorry, there was a mistake, we have to do it again. So they filled it out one more time. When the scientists used sympathy as a tool, the happiness level went down 10%. When the scientists used empathy as a tool, happiness went up 10%. The difference, 20 basis points between sympathy and empathy. And do you know why? This is the reason why.
I felt like we were on the same team, like the same side. Like, oh, you know, this guy knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Feeling like I'm not the only person that gets a ton of parking tickets made me feel better. And I was like, okay, you're good. Like this will, you know, blow over.
If someone like really sits down and is like, oh my gosh, we'll figure this out, I'm on your team, then you feel like they're kind of going above and beyond being a decent human being.
That sucks that you had to go through that. You know, that's like the typical, like your average response. Like people who really care, they're like, yeah, I've been there. You know, they'll take the time to relate with your situation to help you feel better, to get you out of it.
So what does it have to do with now? Why is it relevant for you? Because remember, there is no B2B anymore and B2C. It's head to head, human to human, right? That means we're mixing private and work. So we need empathy much more than we have. And because we have a computer lens, a camera lens, and Instagram in front of us, we don't get it anymore. Because you are the leader in being innovative as a small startup, because you are the #1 in empathy in the world, because you have service culture built into your veins, combine it, use it as your strength. I just want to share a little model with you, which is kind of interesting, because what we know now is that empathy also leads to something else. In all our studies, we know now that empathy equals common sense. Common sense is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of another person and see what that person is feeling. Common sense is the opposite of bureaucracy. And you guys sometimes in the government in this country love bureaucracy, but that's a different story. So what does it mean? Well, if you have do and don't, should and shouldn't up on a graph, you can basically say that companies which are really should and do, they're common sense companies. They are empathy companies. And down there you have nonsense company, bureaucracy, big conglomerates, PowerPoint shows, all that stuff. Now what's interesting is, if you are a small startup, you will notice that the common sense is really big. Why is that? Because they're close to the essence of what consumers want. Why is that? Because it started up by the founder, which tried the problem him or herself, right? So it's infused into the foundation of the company. And then as they grow bigger and more compensant, then lawyers are employed, and we have all these stuff going in, red tape everywhere, and suddenly the company is killed. I'll give you an example. 3 young kids are sitting in a dorm room in the United States. And I'm not sure what they're smoking or drinking, but they're doing something illegal. And they're off their head. And they post photos online. And of course, hell breaks loose. Mom and dad call them and say, what the heck are you guys doing? And they look each other in the eyes the day after and said, oh, I wish we could retract those photos. That became the foundation of Snapchat. Today, a $50 billion company. It started with empathy. They felt the pain. They recruited like-minded people with the pain. And when Mark Zuckerberg started to buy the company, they said no to his couple of $1 billion because he has zero empathy. Right? So what we're talking about here is really that empathy is the opposite of this. I am, let's say, the customer. I'm the round hole, and the square peg is the service I'm offering. Well, I can't fit it in there. Let's push it down as much as we can, because I know it doesn't fit 100%, but let's do it anyway. That is what companies are doing when they're disconnected from reality. I want to give you an example of that. In fact, I'll give you 2 examples to give you a sense of how this now is waved into the way we transform organizations. But first, before doing that, I want to give you a hint. If you're up for it, you okay? By the way, are you okay? I haven't asked you. Are you okay? Yes? That is lousy. Are you guys okay? Oh, I thought you fallen asleep. I understand. Maybe it's boring. You know what? During COVID-19, I, like everyone else, created new habits. In fact, I would claim that I am today 25% more busy than I was before COVID with stuff. Not even productive stuff, just stuff. I'm just more busy with, I don't know what. Are you feeling the same? Raise your hand. Yeah, right? Do you know why? This is crazy. We're all busy making each other busy to justify that we are busy, right? So we're all super busy. And it's funny because it's in our language now. When you go up to a person and he says to you, how are you doing? I'm so busy. Whew, so am I. I can't tell you how busy I am. If there's a bigger word than busy, that's me, okay? It's very rare people say, so how are you doing, Martin? My God, I have so much time. I don't know what to do with all this time. It's just like I'm swimming around in time, right? And people look at you and they say, that guy, he's a loser. He's not busy, right? But what has happened in our society is it's become addictive to be busy, right? So I decided the other day to clean up my house, the brain, for a second. So I developed this little model because we need to do that now so we can move on. So on the bottom right, we have eliminate. What are the things you do every day which actually are stupid? Now, when we got to the other side of COVID-19 and you develop all these bad habits before COVID, during COVID, and now you're after COVID, as a layer of... I'll give you an example. I watched too many YouTube videos. I did. It's true. I did. I put on a little timer. I had, for one day, I watched 1 hour and 29 minutes of stuff. I have no idea about what it was about. No idea. It's like they stole 1 hour and 21 minutes from my brain, right? I got rid of it. I basically just reinstalled YouTube. And because all my cookies are gone, it's sending me the worst crap, so I'm just not looking at it anymore, right? So there's stuff you can eliminate, right? And then there's stuff where you can say, not sure. Let's just get back to that one. Things where you say, I want to keep that. And things where you say, let's improve it. Do a spring cleanup. I had what I call a to-do list. How many of you have a to-do list? Raise your hand, to-do list. Oh, you are busy. I can see you busy. You love being busy, right? How many of you have an on-to-do list? On-to-do list. Oh, one person. That is where you say the stuff I should stop doing. Because we have so much stuff we start doing, but there's nothing going out. It's just like going in, all of it, right? And this is important for you to have in mind, because if you want to change organizations, you can't ask people to do project transformation because people don't have the time because they're busy. They're really busy. So we have to clean up people's minds before you change organizations. So let me just show you what changing organizations mean and where empathy plays in. You can see an organization from 2 points of view, inside out or outside in. Inside out is which processes in your organization are truly frustrating. If any one of you working in an organization which is more than 500 people, you know what I mean. And then you have which of your products, services, or interactions would your customers like to improve or kill. There's a lot of stuff out there. Okay, the next box is this. What are the assumptions justifying the current approach? Then comes this one here. Because most of the stuff we do is irrational. Remember, 85%? So if we scrap this approach and stop pretending people were rational, what will we change? And then the last thing you do is to look at what we call 90-day interventions. You basically say, let's make a change not the next 2 years, but in the next 3 months. Because we have no patience anymore. Everything has to happen fast. Okay, have this in mind now, because now I'm going to give you an example. So what does it mean in reality? Well, first of all, Richard Branson is well known for saying one single thing. He basically says that it's all to do in the end of the day with the customer experience. But he also says, in the end of the day, when you build brands, you have to have a strong culture. The strong culture then feeds off to the customers. So when we are talking about changing companies, changing brands, it actually starts with the people first, which comes from the empathy. Why does that matter? When JF Kennedy went to the plant where they're building that rocket going up to the moon, he stopped at a cleaner. The cleaner, he was just cleaning the floor. And JF Kennedy asked him, "What's your job here?" And the cleaner answered back, "I'm here to put the man on the moon." Which is very interesting, because suddenly there was a sense of purpose, no matter what level you are in the organization. Empathy was there. It was that cornerstone standing for every little aspect of the dimension in the organization, going the whole way up. That is lacking today. It's gone. We're too busy earning money, being busy, right? So the first cornerstone when you transform and build companies, whether that's a small startup or a big company, is to start with a purpose. It is to say that you need to have all these different dimensions, which in the past was seen as being separate, actually coming together and defining a purpose, whether that's marketing and culture and communication and sustainability. All of that has to come together and define the heart of the company. That's what Patagonia did the other day. They were sold or donated, and the owner got zero because he wanted to use the money for changing the world. That is the generation we're seeing happening right now. It's not a generation which necessarily only wants to earn money. They also want to change the world for the better because they have a huge need for empathy. So that's customer experience, but it comes back to that little map I shared with you the other day. I just want to give you an example here. So one client of ours is Swiss International Airlines. It's an airline company in Europe. And what's interesting about them is they said to us, hey, can you change our customer experience on our aircrafts? I said, yeah, love to. So we started to do research. And what we wanted to figure out was, of course, how does it work when you, for example, complain on a plane? And what we realized was this, that when you complain on a plane, the people on board, the cabin crew, have no idea about your history. No idea. Yeah, they can see you're a high member or not, but I can't see that you, in the last flight, lost that flight. And you lost your luggage there, and you're downgraded there, and you had a fight with that person. And in fact, when you're getting on board of this plane, you're pissed off. And then you sit in your seat, you try to calm down, you switch on your screen, and at that second, your screen doesn't work. And this is a 12-hour flight going to Los Angeles. The stewardess have no idea, so she says, Mr. Lindstrom, I hope everything is fine. And I'm screaming in her face, no, my screen doesn't work. And she looks at you and thinks, that is an idiot, right? But you don't know that I'm angry. Empathy, right? So what we realized was this. Let's go back to the map. What would your customer like to fundamentally do, change, or improve? Well, today, airline companies, including Swiss, was doing a very simple thing. They said, Mr. Lindstrom, you should not be concerned. I will immediately give you a customer complaint form. And you can fill it out, and we'll get back to you between the next 12 and 18 weeks. And that means I can boil for the next 18 months in my head and spread rumors about this brand as much as I can. So what is my answer? What would the customer like to complain? He would like to say, recognize the issue and give me the damn compensation now. So why is Swiss not doing it? What's the assumption? The assumption is, honestly, we don't trust the cabin crew. They're stealing. Okay, so pause here for a second. If we scrap this approach and stop pretending people are rational, what will we change? Well, listen to this. When we started to track the customer complaint form, we realized that the administration fee of just handling the complaint, not the compensation, was costing $89. I'm not kidding. So we said, let's just stop that whole process. Let's just give them the money on the plane. If it was, Mr. Smith, you angry? $89, here you are. Oh, thank you. Well, it's not that bad. We did that. And we did a pilot, so to speak. And we did one more. And here's what we realized. 3 things. 1, customers certainly liked flying with Swiss because they were acting straight away. 2, we were saving money by doing it. And 3, the cabin crew said to us, wow, I have a mandate now. I have a purpose in my life. And passengers said, wow, they understand my situation. Empathy was coming back. The issue with the organization today, however, is that we have to go through this nightmare of excuses internally in organization to navigate through and come with new ideas. And if you want to have, this is, by the way, real quotes from our clients around the world, excuses for what they shouldn't do, all this stuff, this is excuses, real excuses for why we can't change. And if you want a copy of the slide, I'll give it to you free of charge. You can just use the excuses if you want next time. But here's what's so interesting, and I'll give you an example. You can actually navigate those excuses using empathy. It's true. I'll give you an example. Maersk, the largest shipping company in the world. 25% of all stuff in this room is from them. Reached out to us and said, hey, we really would like to be more customer focused. I asked my question, when did you talk to your customers last? They said to me, never. I said to them, you've been around for 130 years, is that true? They said, yes, it is. I said, fine, I know where we start. So we started to spend time with customers. Now I'm going to introduce you for a new word called rolling. You see, we started to interview customers around the world, and we realized here in Indonesia that a lot of the customers were complaining because the cargo was rolled. Rolled means that you have a container booked, you put your stuff into it, and it never leaves the harbor. Never leaves the harbor. It takes 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, doesn't matter. It takes a long time. It's not guaranteed. It's called rolled. And I went back to Maersk and I said, that is crazy. How on earth can you run a company where 65% of the entire industry is rolled every week? And Maersk said to us, Martin, it's not a problem. We are much better than industry standard. We're only 62%. Which of your product services or interaction would your customer like to improve or kill? If you ask the Maersk customers, the answer is very simple. Why is my cargo rolled? Why can't you just guarantee a delivery? What are the assumptions justifying the current approach? If you ask Maersk, the answer is very simple. Customers should be better at planning their logistics, period. Empathy? No, not really. Okay, so what do? Ooh, that's where you hit the immune system in an organization. The defense mechanism for change. That's why people are saying, we invented the container. We don't want to change because in the industry you don't have upfront payment like you have in airline companies. It's not a standard. So they said, we don't want to do upfront payment. We will lose markets here. It's too dangerous. So no, we don't want to do it. What happened was that they have a set standard in people's minds, holding people back from change. Or let me give you another example. This is what happened at Maersk.
The three people on the left are actors. They've been briefed to stand or sit when they hear this. Everyone else that's brought in is a genuine shortlisted applicant. They've been given no instructions other than to fill out their forms. My team and I were secretly watching from another room. The more socially compliant a person is, the more they're likely to look to others for signs of how to behave.
This is going to be your spot.
And the more people, the greater the pressure to join in. In this case, whether to stand or sit. Those people that didn't follow the crowd were removed. I think we have to lose Amy, sadly.
Amy, with me?
Once we had a full house, we got rid of the actors, leaving us with a room full of compliant people standing up and sitting down, even though nobody told them to do this.
Can we bring out the bell, please, and see how many can stand up now? I know this is a difficult metaphor for me to use in Indonesia, but my dad always said, if you want to get ahead of the leaders, don't follow his tracks in the snow. What I learned from the Maersk story was that was the issue. That is the brick wall of change in larger organizations. So how do you get around it? You don't look at other shipping companies. Forget about it. That's not how you change. You look completely elsewhere. You change your point of view. So here's what we did. I said to Maersk, what company do you really like? What company do you really admire which is not in logistics? They said, we love Uber. Oh, it's amazing. It's simple, it's quick, it's coming in time, it's cheap, it's everything. I said, fantastic. Let's do a little exercise. Let's imagine that Maersk buys Uber. Maersk buy Uber. Can you imagine? What would happen then? And then we had 88,000 staff from around the world simulating what would happen if Maersk bought Uber. And here is one of the conclusions.
Hello. Excuse me?
And suddenly, just as the straw story, a penny dropped on the floor and people realized, gosh, I get it now. We took that knowledge, by the way, and started to travel around the world. We went from one country to another, including here in Indonesia, and we had people simulating what would happen if Maersk bought Uber. People started to feel the pain as a flower grower. If those flowers are not leaving, now they're dead after 2 weeks because rolling is dictating this company. And one by one, through brainstormings, the entire organization's immune system started to soften up and realized empathy had died in the biggest shipping company in the world. And as a consequence of that, suddenly Maersk had a problem here. The issue we're talking about right now is that we actually now are talking about empathy embedded into the organization. Wow. So let's just go back to the box. We have customers should be better planning their shipment. If we scrap this approach and stop pretending people were rational, what will we change? The answer is very simple. The answer is, why don't we just ask for upfront payment and in return remove rolling? Which is exactly what we did. And the result is coming in a second. My team just have to go out of the computer and back in again to show it to you. Hang on a second. Go, it comes now. So what you're seeing here is a TV commercial which launched the concept worldwide and transformed the entire industry over 5 seconds globally. Here it is.
Imagine if a restaurant was like shipping. What would it be like? Well, ordering would mean lots of paperwork. And it's, complex. Once you place your order, everything seems fine. Unless, of course, there's an overbooking. When that happens, you might be rolled. So, it's quite common to place extra orders, just to be on the safe side, but not always letting the supplier know that you did, and all the while the price might change, or extra fees might be added. This is quite a challenge, when all you want is a clear overview of your price.
At Maersk, we believe it's time for a change, and we're going all the way to make it happen. Introducing Maersk Spot, a loading guarantee, easy online booking, and a fixed price.
What was the result? Very simple. The result was this. suddenly people started to like Maersk. In fact, if I put some of the stats here, the net promoter score went up 279%, brand value 1,700%, and the share price 301%, was the highest increase in the history of the company taking place over the last 3 years. This is due to one simple word, which is empathy. I think actually, should we just take a couple of questions? I think we have 2 or 3 minutes for questions. Does anyone have questions? Because that would be a really good time to ask questions. See, we have some questions. Maybe there's no questions. Maybe you all want to go home, right? So I'll go up here to our technicians and ask them for questions. If there's a lovely lady down here. Hang on a second, I'll find you. I'll keep a distance to you because I don't have my mask handed here. Hang on.
Thank you. So I'm an employee working for private office. So my question is, how to balance empathy for customer and for employee, because maybe the employee who work directly with the customer just so tired because maybe they were squeezed by their employer, so they don't have the energy left for the customer. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. And that is a big challenge when people in call centers or in service functions are put under so much pressure as they often are. The most important thing you can do is to make sure that the customers are not numbers, but they become real people. And those real people are examples you show to senior management. So I would, if I was you in whatever function you have, I would, with permission, say to the customer, can I video film you? Can I see your story, hear your story, and film that story for 3 minutes? And I will ask everyone in your team to video film amazing small stories, the good ones and the bad ones. And I'll create a collection. And then I will show that if our employees are really motivated, this is how quickly they can turn them around. And I'll also say to them, if not, this is how bad it ends. So I'll create an internal video case. The video cases I'll show to my manager and package it to show it to them. You can use your smartphone. You can edit it on your computer. But use it as a case so you can convince them to feel the pain they also are feeling. Because quite often they're not even aware of that they're damaging a brand because the employees in the organization are too tired. It's very important to allocate that time, right? Thank you. Who else have a question? Yes.
Continue from that. Interesting. Then how to make empathy become the enforcement culture in the organization? Any tips from you? Thank you.
Thank you. It's very simple. Create an onboarding program where you start time first with your customers, where you train your staff in interacting with customers and see and experience their point of view. When McDonald's was slightly smaller than it was about 20 years ago, the CEO of McDonald's, Charlie Bell, told me a story. He actually started in McDonald's in the restaurant, flipping burgers in Sydney. And he worked in the restaurant for half a year. And then he worked his way up. And when I started to work with him, he said, I really understand the DNA of the customer because I started interacting with the customers as a person in the front line. Today, they don't do it anymore. The customer experience has collapsed. You need to make sure that every single new staff member coming on board is trained from a customer point of view. Spend time in the homes, in the offices, in the front line, and just to learn, not to do work. And you allocate some days to that. Don't put them into the function straight away because people need to understand the culture and what matters. And ideally, you need to create time every Monday to gather all the information. Share it to all your colleagues and exchange it and think, what is the one thing we can improve now based on what we learned? Try to make it tangible. That's the most important thing, right? Beautiful. I don't think we have more time, but what I will do is I probably would like to do a summary. So, do you remember we talked about the hats? They all began with the hats. So the simple story is this. There is no B2B or B2C anymore. The idea is very simple. It's all about human to human. And with that comes, it's all about emotions. We lack emotions right now. It's become a very rational world because of technology. You guys are sitting on an asset which is extremely powerful. That's number 2. Number 3, as we just talked about right now, put yourself in the shoes of the customer. Do an onboarding program where you experience the pains of the customer and build it into the very beginning of your organization. Don't wait. It has to be from the very first day I, as a staff member, joined the company. And last but not least, use the power of empathy by predicting not what your competitors are doing, but what a completely different industry is doing, by saying to you, if you love this company, what would happen as a consequence if you bought them? Yeah, they would collapse. Why? Because you have to change yourself. Use empathy to put a mirror up in front of senior management so they can feel the issue. And by the way, it's a really difficult password, as you can see. Uppercase Rethink. If you take a photo of that, that is all the slides from today. You can use it, steal it, including the bad excuses for not to change. It's free of charge, right? Or you can go into lindstromcompany.com and download the file using Rethink. Remember, it's uppercase. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, by the way, where I have something called the M&M Show. And by the way, if you want to be more inspired, the M&M Show is a cool show. We have the most well-known experts in the world talking to us every second week about exactly what we're talking about right now. It's free of charge, so hopefully you will enjoy that. And this is really my little presentation. I want to wrap up with a little quote, a quote which says simple. Act your way into new ways of thinking rather than think your way into new ways of acting. I guess this is it. You guys have a benefit. You're sitting on a gold mine right now of talent in Indonesia. Do me a favor. This is the moment to use it. Don't let me down. I love Indonesia. Just show it to me that you can make yourself different. Because if you just compete on everyone else's terms, you won't make it happen. But if you use your power of empathy, then you will. Thanks a lot. And good luck, right?
Beli-beli. Beli-beli. Beli-beli-beli.
Gratis ongkir. Beli-beli.
Beli-beli. Gratis ongkir. Download Beli-beli sekarang. Beli-beli. Beli-beli-beli-beli. Beli-beli tepat waktu. Beli-beli. Beli-beli tepat waktu. Download Beli-beli sekarang. Beli-beli.
Beli-beli, beli-beli.
Beli-beli pasti ori. Beli-beli. Beli-beli pasti ori. Download Beli-beli sekarang. Pasti puas, pasti Beli-beli.